I find that discussing who the greatest guitarist of all time might be is a rather uninteresting topic. I mean, let's be honest, it's probably Jimi Hendrix, and there's not a whole lot that needs to be added to that well-worn discussion. However, what I do find rather interesting is talking about who the second greatest guitarist of all time might be. So today, I'm making my case for a whole bunch of candidates that might take home that silver medal. But before we get into it, I'll quickly let you know that I'm doing a limited flash sale over my course platform, samuraiguitartheory.com. You're going to hear me play a whole bunch of different styles today. My ability to do that comes from the systematic approach I've taken to learning music and getting to the bottom of why it works the way it does. There, I have 4 courses that break down the system I use for making music from the ground up. First 25 of you to use promo code SECONDGREATEST will get 50% off anything over there. You can find more information at samuraiguitartheory.com. I'll also put up links in the description. Anyways, let's get to it. I think it's important to start this off by discussing what great even means. And while I'd like to approach this from an objective perspective, when it comes to something like art, there will always be personal bias. I've spent a lot more time in certain areas of music than others, which will naturally skew my perceptions. But I believe that a great guitarist is someone who is highly influential. The more direct the influence, the better. If you went back in time and convinced Jimi Hendrix to become a Seattle city planner, then the musical and guitar landscape from 67 onwards would be drastically different. Innovation is another key component. If you're able to do something quite a bit different than your peers, bring something new and fresh and exciting to the table, then you're getting marks in my books. Another thing is just ability, which is a hard thing to quantify, but you gotta have the ability to create a positive emotional connection between the music that you create and a wide range of people. And I'm 100% positive that everyone will completely agree with my list. But if that's not the case, you can always feel free to get loud and sassy in the comment section. Anyways, here are my candidates in chronological-ish order for the second greatest guitarist. Born in Hazelhurst, Mississippi, 1911, is option number 1, Robert Leroy Johnson. Robert Johnson was one of the original blues icons, at least as far as the recorded history of the genre goes. He received little to no acclaim in a short 27 years. His life was shrouded with legend and myths of selling his soul to the devil, but what is known for sure is that the 29 songs that he recorded laid the groundwork for rock and roll and all of its offshoots. For example, I'm sure that you've heard a guitar part that sounds like this before. That little boogie thing you just heard is one of the many things that's commonly attributed to Robert Johnson. His intricate fingerstyle acoustic playing to me still sounds fresh and alive, even though it's closing in on 100 years old and countless guitarists have tried to emulate it. And one of the things that I think makes Robert Johnson so great and stand out among some of his other contemporaries of the time is that when you listen to him, it doesn't feel like he's putting on a performance. It feels like you're getting a glimpse into the deepest part of a man's soul through music. And the impact of those mere 29 songs that he recorded can be seen all throughout the history of guitar thereafter. Pretty much every guitarist has some Robert Johnson in their DNA, whether they know it or not. The next option I'm going to go with is Charlie Christian, one of the first electric guitar greats that paved the road for all jazz, blues, and rock guitarists that came soon after. Charlie Christian rose to stardom with the Benny Goodman Orchestra between 1939 and 1941 during the swing era, and many would consider him to be the godfather of the guitar solo. Before Charlie, guitar was generally seen as a rhythm instrument, but with the new technology that he adopted, he was able to amplify his instrument so it can now compete with the volume of the horn players, drummer, and full band. When you listen to Charlie, you hear the makings of the vocabulary that would come to define rock, blues, and jazz. I've only recently really come to understand and appreciate what Charlie brought to the instrument. And I think it's a real shame that his name isn't brought up more in discussions like these. He was truly a pioneer whose influence can't be overstated. Next up is a guitarist who very much stood on the shoulders of Charlie Christian, the jazz giant Wes Montgomery. Wes Montgomery's most prolific years were from the late 50s through to the end of the 60s, and it was during this time that he essentially defined what jazz guitar was. He played with the thumb, and while he did a lot of single note lines and chordal style soloing, it was the octaves that he played that most would come to associate with him. He played a groovy, blues-infused style of jazz that I just absolutely love, before he eventually transitioned into these big, lavish arrangements of instrumental pop songs, which I don't love quite as much, but it was this music that brought him to the masses. And perhaps one of the things I like most about Wes is he had this uncanny ability to play the most perfect, beautiful, fluid lines for the moment. He just always sounded incredibly good and set the standard for all the guitarists that would come after him. Moving on, we have my next candidate, the one and only Chuck Berry. In the mid to late 50s, Chuck Berry brought his unique mashup of country, R&B, and blues to a new white mainstream audience, and this musical stew would soon become known as rock and roll, and there's no denying that Chuck Berry was a key component in its birth. This music was driven by Chuck's signature double stop riffs and heavy rhythms rooted in the blues. It was the songs, the sounds, the showmanship that allowed this music to reach new heights and inspire wave upon wave of new musicians to pick up the guitar. I mean, look no further than the early recordings of the Rolling Stones and the Beatles to hear direct impact of Chuck Berry on things to come. Moving on, my fifth candidate for the second greatest guitarist is Mr. Guitar himself, Chet Atkins. A lot of us tend to forget how popular country music truly is, and it's the last place in mainstream music where I still hear guitar at the forefront. Now, love or hate what country music has become, there's no denying the impact that Chet Atkins has had on the genre. He's produced, played with, or collaborated with all the greats of country. He's won every award that he possibly could, and his ability to make the guitar sound like three people playing it at the same time is unparalleled and something that I look at with great awe. I don't think you can make this list without the next candidate, the guitarist of Led Zeppelin, Jimmy Page. Jimmy Page brought a completely new sound to the musical lexicon and redefined what rock and roll was. Though all four members definitely contributed to the band, it's Jimmy Page's ramped up blues licks, his studio experiments, his open tunings, his writing that made Led Zeppelin the template for future rock and rollers. When you think of guitar hero, rock god, you think Jimmy Page. And I know myself and many other guitarists out there don't get sucked into this instrument in the same way. If it isn't for him, Jimmy Page is certainly one of the most iconic and influential musicians in the history of electric guitar. Option number 7 is, for lack of a better term, unknown metal guy. I'll admit that I don't know metal, I don't listen to metal, I don't particularly love it, but I do respect it, and I know that metal today is a huge part of the guitar landscape. I don't know who it is, but I'm sure somebody did for metal what Wes Montgomery did for jazz. I want to say it's like Tony Iommi, one of the dudes from Metallica, Dimebag, Randy Rhoads maybe. I got to admit that I don't have the knowledge here. I don't know who slots in, but this list doesn't make sense without one of the metal greats. So please let me know who it is in the comments. I'm story for any of the metalheads that I've disappointed. And the final option that I'm going to present as the candidate for second greatest guitarist is Eddie Van Halen. Eddie is very much like Jimi Hendrix in the sense that there is guitar before Eddie and then there's guitar after. If we as society decided to reset the calendar so that year zero was February 10th, 1978, the year that Van Halen 1 came out, there would be a lot of guitar players who would be okay with that. The guy reinvented the guitar, and it wasn't like this was the 50s where the electric guitar was this new and exciting thing. This was at a time when a lot of people had already extracted a lot out of it, and he did something completely different, which to me is just incredible. It's the speed, the technique, the precision that Eddie brought to the table, the tapping that he invented / popularized, the heavy grooves that infected all of those Van Halen songs that he co-wrote. I wouldn't even consider myself a huge Van Halen guy per se, but the impact and greatness is indisputable. So those would be my first ballot candidates, but since I can't help myself, these are the notable absences that should probably be in the conversation too. Dick Dale, the king of surf rock. Stevie Ray Vaughan reset the guitar in the 80s and brought it back to its blues roots. Brian May created some of the most iconic guitar parts ever. Vince Gill has won 22 Grammys, and every chicken pickin' player both sides of the Mississippi strive to play like him. Clapton, he's been one of the faces of guitar since the 60s. Django was the greatest gypsy jazz musician. Segovia, I actually know nothing about Segovia, but he's the one classical guitarist I know, so I'm pretty sure he's a big deal. Les Paul not only had a hand in crafting the guitar itself, but was responsible for plenty of studio techniques and musical stylings. Guthrie Govan set a new standard, and there are plenty more guitarists that I probably could have added. Like David Gilmour, I didn't even mention him, but let me know who you think that I've missed in the comment section. And remember, if you want to learn my system for making music, be one of the first 25 people to use promo code SECONDGREATEST over my course platform, samuraiguitartheory.com. Links are in the description. Who knows, maybe these courses will help you become one of the future greats. Thank you all for watching, and an extra big thank you to everyone who supports my channel through Patreon. If you want to check out another video like this one, hit that link up there. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, and stay tuned for a wide range of music-related content. Until next time, look after yourselves, look after each other, look after the planet. I'm Samurai Guitarist, and I'll see you again soon.